Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Apologize for the delay. Good evening, family. Welcome to our Friday night podcast on the Grown Talking Network at the 8 o'clock hour. As always, our theme is combating systemic racism through education. Today's host, or co-host, will be, I need to make him the co-host. Let's see.
Don't start doing nothing.
Pardon me? Let's see. What is... Okay. Okay, Dr. McIntosh?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
What number are you at? What's your phone number, 949?
No, 347-907.
Okay, sure. I'll make you the co-host. No? It should make you the co-host.
Why? Who are you doing? You're doing someone else. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's leave that alone right now. It's not even responding properly. Okay, as I said, my co-host will be Dr. James McIntosh. He is a what we call a Baba, a doctor, a healer. You know, Baba we refer to as an elder, a wise one. You know, one who is older, one who we look up to. That's personified by Dr. James McIntosh. He's a father, brother, healer. The esteemed J. Curtis McIntosh. He has been in the battle for many years, always moving on or from an Afrocentric perspective in his area of psychiatric consult. Based in New York, he has worked tirelessly in the struggle for liberation of African people in the hellhole of North America. His mission never wavers in the face of stultifying and withering assaults on our people daily. He's a community activist, a devoted husband and father, a bright and shining light, even in the twilight, a supporter, a defender of all things African. Mm-hmm. J.C. McIntosh is a rock, a steadying force, and a maelstrom of what has been wrought in the struggle for survival in the sea of malignancy upon our mind, body, and soul. Mm-hmm. Our spirit, our faith, all things are significant to humankind. Even our reason for being. You know, young people need to get out and try to enroll in these kinds of courses, mental health careers. Because statistics say that less than 5% of the psychiatrists and therapists are African American or black. And my granddaughter name is Kiara Imani Williams. She wrote a book called Therapy Isn't Just for White People. Interesting book. And therapy isn't just for white people. And of all the people who need therapy on this planet, the African people do. After ages and ages abuse, discrimination, devaluation of personhood, enslavement of the worst kind ever in the history of the world, Holocaust upon Holocaust upon Holocaust, on the continent and off the continent. Now, we have a man here who is a supreme authority in looking at the things that deal with the African mind. Of course, he is prepared to deal with what happens with any kind of mind, but he's particularly astute when it comes to the African mind. See, that's what we need, somebody astute in understanding the African mind. Okay? And so, therefore, we need to listen to what he is going to tell us, especially about this area of cognitive dissonance and also anamnesis, this forgetting, having amnesia about, well, he'll discuss it with you, and this area of cultural appropriation. These people steal everything we do. They watch us do it, and then they do it a little bit, seem like it could be it, and they steal it. They say it's theirs. I mean, they went to the continent, learned in the mystery system, got all the knowledge there. Ultimately, they burned the libraries of Alexandria and so on and so forth. And they come out talking about they created and found everything. But people don't even realize, though, that centuries and centuries and centuries of awesome civilizations that went forth in Africa, on the continent, our cable line, the white people gave it the name Africa, so we sort of stuck with it for right now, how to deal with it. But the Nile Valley is 4,100 miles. The continent is only about 5,000 miles from north to south. And this Nile Valley, high culture, developed, came up from out under in the area of the Congo. If you look at the map, or know the map, or you need to study the map when you get a chance, you could even Google it right now on your smartphone. Now, in that area, from the 4,100 mile area, the culture rose up from the south to the north. So the culture didn't just start right there where Egypt was and is. It was a combination of multitudes of people from the south to the north, and also from the east to the west. Now, there's a book by Molecular Sante, who deals only with Africa, not just the north of Africa, the south of Africa. He deals with the whole thing. And you're going to be interested when you hear him talk on the 6th of October. Molecular Sante has written over 100 books. He is Baba, and he is an awesome leader of a man for our people. He has turned out. I'm talking about the brother Molecular Sante for the moment. I didn't forget my great hero that we have here right now. But I just wanted to give you a little tidbit. Molecular Sante has written over 100 books and who knows how many other pamphlets and so on. But he's going to be here on the 6th. And I'm blessed to be able to have him on this podcast on the 6th because Dr. McIntosh and myself only met on the 30th day of May. I had never heard of him. I've been in a dark place, I told you before. I came up out of it after a while, and here I come, looking up here. On May the 30th, I'm looking at my phone, and it says Dr. McIntosh, Black History. I had never talked to him, didn't know who he was. And I was thinking about trying to write, I'm writing a book about my program in Africana Studies at Week Lake High School. So I called the number, and Dr. McIntosh answers, so he doesn't know me. So I'm telling him they have this program in Africana Studies, and he's sort of like probably wondering, is this guy touched or something? But after saying a few things like Dr. Zen, John Henry Clark, and Nir Baraka, and Lynn Jeffries, and Malvin R. Good, and Gil Noble, and Barakan, and Kunstler, after a while he said, "Oh, wait a minute, what's up with this?" So I tell him I'm trying to find Molefi Asante. He tells me, "Are you a researcher and all that, as you say?" "Yeah." "Well, you know where he is?" "Yeah." "Simple." "Well, I don't think you've been trying hard enough." I hang up the phone from him, and I call, and sure enough, well, this is the creator, and this is in the plan. Molefi Asante's secretary answers, and she says, "He had 5 calls today. I don't believe he'll get to yours today." And I said, "Well, gee, I'm sure after I speak with you, he'll call me back today." Well, that's pretty bold, huh? And so here he comes, 20 minutes later. After a 20-minute chat and being astounded at the fact that a program like that existed, he was trying in every way to figure out how could this program be. And then he asked me ultimately, where's the program now? I said it was banned by the city of Newark because they were going in another direction. I guess Africana Studies wasn't in the future. Yeah, we could put it that way. He said, "Well, you need to write a book and get a podcast." Well, that was May 30th. I didn't have no prospects of a podcast, and the book wasn't moving along either at all. So, 2 weeks later, as I'm looking for students of mine to actually be eyewitnesses to the book we're writing, I found Forrest Nance, who I hadn't seen since 1995. So Forrest Nance said to me, "Mr. Williams, I've got a podcast, and I think you'll fit." And the rest is history. So there's, McIntosh, set it in motion. And here I am. And so I want to, before we do that, I want to say something about the fossil fuel protest that's going to be occurring on Sunday in Manhattan. There'll be people leaving from various train lines and bus lines in Newark to get into the city. It's going to be a very, very powerful protest. It's a worldwide protest against fossil fuels, etc., because at the UN next week, they're going to be having a conference on it. It may be the largest worldwide fossil fuel protest. Yet I hardly hear anybody talking about it. I guess the media doesn't want people to know it, because if they know it, they might come to New York, I suppose. But even if you don't go to New York, they're protesting simultaneously all over the planet. This is a critical problem that needs to be dealt with. Hopefully some of you may be able to go there. It's on Sunday, and I believe the protest will be starting at West 55th. I'm not sure where in New York. Probably could check with the People's Organization for Progress or Sharpton or somebody like that. Either way, hopefully this protest will address the crisis. But I'd like to make an observation for and say a prayer for the people of Morocco. There was a massive earthquake there on last week, and they say maybe 3,000 people have died. Thousands are in critical condition, and other thousands are missing. That's a true catastrophe. Now, in addition to problems like that, the prison pipeline is open and smoothly running. Our students continue to receive some standard education. They aren't getting the true representation of history in the schools. And then there are actually school districts that are banning books. And of course they're saying we don't want to teach black history. Of course, there are other catastrophic things going on in the housing area, employment, the economics, the debt, no reparations, systemic racism continues apace, eating at the Five Brothers Society. I mean, it's really a horrible, horrible situation we're in. I guess the brothers, when they said the ball of confusion, Temptation talking about the ball of confusion. It's a ball of confusion, all right. And essentially it seems that the Europeans who dominate this country have been told again and again, sort of like going to your doctor. In 1968, the Current Commission on Civil Disorders said if America didn't do something about it, let us say civil disorders and all sorts of issues like that will continue apace. At that time, they were considering what to do about what Lyndon Johnson called the season of rioting. I think you may be aware that in 1964, there was a rebellion in Harlem and a lot of other places in America. In 1965, there was a rebellion in Watts and lots of other places in America. In 1966, there was a rebellion in Chicago and lots of other places in America. 1967 was the Newark Rebellion and Plainfield and a lot of other places, and Detroit and a lot of other places. In 1968, Dr. King was assassinated, and there were rebellions all over the country. I call these things that black people are doing rebellions because for all too long in the history of this country, white people consistently, regularly rioted against black people. It seems that they were like on autopilot. If they heard that a Negro did something, it seemed like hundreds of them would appear with a single-minded purpose to lynch them a ninja. I mean, sad. We're going to lynch them a Negro. We're going to lynch them. We're going to brutalize them. We're going to burn them. So you had all that going on in this country, and continuing the pace. So in the 60s, when those rebellions occurred, Lyndon Johnson, the southerner from Texas, told Al Kerner, the governor of Illinois, please get a committee together. They got John Lindsay of New York and some other people, and they said the major cause of rioting in America is white racism. And if we don't do something about it, it will continue to happen. They will continue to happen again and again. So they said in '68, the major cause of rioting is white racism. The major cause of all the problems in this country is white racism. So do they do something about it? No. They decide, I got cancer. I'll die with it. So that part of it is really a sad deal. Of course, the media continues to be biased, and mass killings continue apace. There's a sickness about in society, and people say that when these white kids go around killing up the schools and just going into all odd places and just killing up a bunch of people, generally a lot of them are killing black people, unless they're in the school where they go to, and they kill up their own fellow students. But that's a psychosis, a problem. Yes. Don't say that they had a mental health problem based on just some kind of issue was in their mind and they suddenly lost their mind. No, they're taught racism from being tiny babies. And because they're taught the racism, it manifests ultimately down the road. So don't say they all have mental illness problems. Well, sure, racism is a mental illness. So I guess you could say that is. Well, Dr. McIntosh can better assess that. So, without further ado, we would like to have Dr. McIntosh address the group here, and there'll be a Q&A, I'm sure. And we want to have questions related to mental illness, and certainly we as a people don't like going to psychiatrists because as a rule, these people don't know our culture, they don't know us, and by the way, it's a systemic racist society, so there's systemic racism in psychiatry too. It's in everywhere. But of course, it's not there when we find a brother like J.C. McIntosh, Dr. J.C. McIntosh. Brother McIntosh, you have the floor.
Yes, sir. Well, I would really like the questions before anything else, rather than to try to give a lecture on, racism and psychiatry. I mean, I certainly can talk about a couple of those things and a few of the things that are interesting to us. But do you have people that have questions that want to ask me something?
Okay, well, I'll start with this. First of all, one of the biggest problems is this thing called cognitive dissonance. Now, some people use the word, a term, but they don't explain the term. So I wonder if you could sort of break down what cognitive dissonance is, or give me some examples of it, sort of.
Well, people make a lot of times people make easy things not, they make them difficult, okay? So if you would just say like a very brief definition, you would say that when your beliefs and your actions aren't in sync, that's cognitive dissonance. The word cognition has to do with knowing, learning, those sorts of things. It comes from the Latin cognitere, and that is a combination of the word that means to know and together being the co-part. And the noscere, G-N-O-S-C-E-R-E, that has to be to know. So cognition, when we're talking about cognition, we're talking about the ways in which you learn, the ways in which you know, the ways in which you acquire knowledge. And when you talk about dissonance, we're talking about a word that really a lot of us are familiar with from music, which means that, two sounds don't go together. And the dis means differ, and the sonas, has to do with the sound. So when we're talking about cognitive dissonance, we're saying that your thoughts, they don't go together with something else. And it's not just limited to your actions; it could be towards your feelings. When these people talk about cognitive dissonance, they're talking about the specific term, and they credit it to a guy named Festinger in 1957. And a whole lot of, like therapies came out of it, all kinds of ideas about the fact that tension is created in you, or pain is created in you when two ideas don't go together. But we have a lot of psychiatry. We had psychiatry in ancient Kemet. We had psychiatry in Africa, and these concepts, although they didn't have this particular name, they were illustrated quite perfectly. A lot of the things, brother, I'm going to have to ask you to hold on 1 second, okay? And if you can carry it for just a minute, I'll be right back, okay? I have something I have to do.
Okay. Okay. Well. This doesn't even mute the room. What's up with this?
Okay, so sorry, I'm back. Of course, my doorbell rang as soon as I started speaking. So okay. I what I was saying is that although this term,
Okay, wait a minute.
That actually, I don't know, I'm getting a lot of sounds that don't make sense. Can you hear me? Don't make sense. Can you hear me?
No, yeah, there's
I'm hearing echo. I'm hearing the echo. I'm hearing the. Maybe is a microphone next to a speaker or something, or speaker or something. Is it a feedback? Wow, unbelievable.
Put myself on mute, so I can't use the room because something is disallowing me from doing it.
Okay.
You can always use the room. Here, I can't use the room. There's something wrong with that.
Okay. Did it stop? Okay.
Recording stopped.
Okay, excuse me, Brother Williams, are you still there? If you're there, I cannot hear you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure. Somebody stopped the recording. I don't know what to say about that part.
That was me. I had put it. When I heard you having difficulty recording, I had put it on a Zoom here so that I could record it. But I just turned everything off to make sure I wasn't providing any feedback. So, just getting back to what I was saying, a lot of the concepts and stuff we use in psychiatry and that are credited to other people are things that are things that in ancient Africa we certainly knew about and we did. You can find some of the concepts in the sayings of Brother Tahotep. You can find others in something like Aesop's Fables, and this includes cognitive dissonance. The idea of your thought not going together with how you're feeling, or your thoughts not going along together with other thoughts. That's illustrated in that story. Remember the story from Aesop? Aesop comes from the word Ethiopian. So the Ethiopian in his stories, he said that this fox saw some grapes, and he tried to get the grapes, but the grapes were too hard. So he kept trying to jump up and get them. Now, he had the thought he wanted the grapes. He thought he could get the grapes, but then to not be able to get the grapes it didn't go together with how he was feeling and his own self-concept. And so the fox said, those grapes are sour anyway. Now, it shows rationalization, but it also shows cognitive dissonance. You understand that these are concepts that are attributed to other people many, many years later, such as Anna Freud with the defense mechanisms, and Fessinger with the concept of cognitive dissonance. Even Frantz Fanon, who was getting it probably more directly from Fessinger, he spoke of cognitive dissonance. But we encounter it all the time when, especially when we encounter Europeans who have their certain kinds of concepts of African people, and when it doesn't go together, they're thrown into some pain. They feel pain. So when Jesse Owens, when the Nazis had certain ideas of a master race, the Aryans, who were just superior mentally, physically, and in every other kind of way, when they ran into Jesse Owens, who beat everybody, they were thrown into a state of cognitive dissonance. It just didn't fit with what they do. Now, when we're, as an individual, when we deal with cognitive dissonance, we only have a couple of choices. We can kind of either change our beliefs, right, if we have a belief, or we can say that something's changed. We can rationalize, say that something's changed. But, Europeans have another way they deal with cognitive dissonance, which is that they will eliminate, they will get rid of the thing that's causing them the cognitive dissonance. That's why they didn't want to compete with Africans in their baseball leagues. at a time when the black leagues were actually the major leagues. They were calling themselves the major leagues. But then they came into contact with players like Josh Gibson and Jackie Robinson and Satchel Paige, and they had to, it caused them a certain amount of dissonance, and it manifests itself in a whole lot of ways. They're always creating great white hopes in order to try to mollify that dissonance that they feel. When Joe Louis was beating everybody, they just brought a whole bunch of people out that they thought might be able to beat him. And they call those people the great white hope. So they have other ways they deal with their cognitive dissonance, which are more physical, which are more violent, and to the fact of destroying certain African artifacts, destroying certain, and not just Africans, when they come into people who have more than they think those people should have, or knew more than they think they should have, they will go through the whole policy, the whole practice of just trying to steal the person's ideas or pass them off as their own. We see modern versions of that with Elvis Presley. They passed him off but basically he was taking black people's music, black people's approach to music, and translating it, and they were hailing him as like the king of rock and roll. And they have the power. That's the difference between racism and just ethnocentricity or other sorts of concepts. Because with racism, you have the power to make your lie a practical truth. So, if you talk about the money that was made, Elvis Presley made more money than anybody. If you talk about the recognition, he got more recognition than anybody. But a guy like Otis Blackwell, who was writing his songs, he had to go get his awards in a hotel room. People didn't even know who he was, and yet he was writing all those songs, or not all of those songs, but some of the most famous songs for Elvis Presley and a lot of those other people who were great white hopes. Great Balls of Fire by Jerry Lee Lewis, Fever by Peggy Lee. Oh my goodness! Don't Be Cruel, I believe it was written by Otis Blackwell. Now I don't want to give wrong information, but there was certainly some of those biggest hits by Elvis Presley were written by Otis Redding. Were written by Otis Blackwell. Pardon me. Okay, so cognitive dissonance. That's Frantz Fanon, as I said before, he spoke about cognitive dissonance. We've had lots of experience with it. There's no point in mystifying and making it something more than it is. It's just when one part of your thoughts doesn't go with another part of your thoughts, and then you have to either change your actions or change your attitude, or you will be in pain, and people try to avoid pain. Anything else?
So in that vein, then, when people realize that a place is segregated, never have a black person working there ever, and someone complains that you don't have black people working here, they look around, they see they're not there. Now, rationally, they have to say, well, gee, something is amiss here. Or they may say, well, I'm comfortable with them not being here, so it's okay they're not here. That's irrational.
Yes.
Okay, and so
to create a feeling that's extremely uncomfortable.
Yes.
Called cognitive dissonance, and because it's so important to protect the core belief, they will rationalize, ignore, and even deny anything that doesn't fit in with their core belief. When they assert that they're the land of the free and the home of the brave, where they assert that that they're a land of equality, they lie when you prove to them that it's not there. When they assert that they're superior, when they assert that black people can't swim because they have heavy femurs, and then black people win races, then they have to either change their attitude, or they have to, as I said before, try to come up with a great white hope. When Tiger Woods, that guy performed under the most even though he didn't, like say, fully acknowledge he was an African. I mean, you can look at him, whatever he believed. When it rained, his hair went back home every day. Went back to Africa every day. So, but the fact of the matter is that they harped on his personal life and put him in a state of mind where he couldn't even win anymore. But for a while, they were definitely thrown into a state of cognitive dissonance. The silence, brother. I don't know if you're there still. Are you still there?
Wait a second. Hold on. I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, and then there's this thing called cultural appropriation. That's another part.
I mean, yeah,
cultural
appropriation. Brother, there's a brother wrote a book called Culture Bandits, and he goes into things like Otis Blackwell and all kinds of other things. You have Big Mama Thornton doesn't get credit for You Ain't Got Nothing But a Hound Dog. They will remember the movie 10 where they had this woman, I can't remember her name, but she came out with cornrows. And she's supposed to represent the perfect 10. And she was supposed to write, you're supposed to be the perfect 10. And, this was hairstyling that we had for millennia on the continent. But they basically claimed it for their own. I mean, nothing that you have will they not envy. I mean, even your brown skin, they're going to put on. They have lotions that they put on to try to make themselves look brown like we look. They will go to the beach and burn themselves trying to look. So I mean, anything of our culture, they will make somebody. They'll say a white person is the king of rap. You're not going to be allowed to have anything that anything they feel entitled to take anything from anyone else's culture and use it in their European way. So that somebody can invent gunpowder and they can have the gunpowder for firecrackers and celebrations, and they take it. It's not simply an innovation. They take it and they use it in their way, which is to make weapons to destroy people. So, cultural appropriation. What is your question? Do you have a question about cultural appropriation, or what do you want to talk about?
Because we're going to have a woman coming in here before the end of the year named Dara Starr Tucker, and she is, I think she's the leading person in the country now talking about cultural appropriation. She's a younger person from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and she goes into showing you explicitly and clearly examples of it that people ordinarily would never think of. She was just in New York on the 11th, and she's going to be in D.C. on the 17th of October, but she's going to be here, I think, in November sometime. But cultural appropriation is when, we know that it means that they watch us. First of all, they say it's low class, it's whatever, gutter music, gutter dancing, or whatever it is, low class or whatever it is. And then once they see it and their children start doing it and they think they sort of got it a little bit, it goes all around the world and they're just all doing it and not giving us credit at all for it. That's what I'm saying.
And not only not the credit, they don't give you the remuneration. They don't give you the fortune that they make stealing our culture.
Yeah, and the beauty. For instance, you mentioned Bo Derek a few minutes ago. Perfect 10. It was ludicrous. This white woman goes and gets some cornrows, and they say, "Oh, perfect 10." Well, back when we were playing the cornrows and all this forever and ever, from the continent to here. And they acted like, oh, that's repugnant. It's unattractive. And people were actually acting as if she made a great discovery.
Yeah.
And yeah. And you can take it from every level you want to. That even in any culture, in any sport, even, for instance, tennis, gymnastics. There were years when everybody that was on the gymnastics floor was white, and these little white girls were winning and winning and winning.
Yeah,
this year, three black girls won the event, first, second, and third.
Sure. I remember a young woman from France that they just would not give, because it's a very subjective sport where they subjectively decide whether the person's a 10, a 9.5, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
She used to protest because it was obvious that, her superiority was obvious, but they, would cheat her. But it's not just in the sports. In the sciences, the first person to open up the chest, was a black physician. The first, the person that has three of the first 10 patents in the in chip technology, a black person. So this gets back to your cognitive dissonance. This counters the thoughts they have about us, and they have to make up some lie or whatever it is to explain it, or to claim that it didn't happen. But we had many, many contributions in the field of medicine, including introducing inoculation to them, with smallpox. Many. But the bottom line is that it's not about an individual being a racist. It's about a system. White supremacy is a system, a way of operating, a way that they dominate and steal and control the world. And what Francis Welsing and Neely Fuller said is, if you don't understand white supremacy, everything else you understand will only serve to confuse you more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're mentioning Francis Welsing. Isn't she the person who created something called the CREST, color confrontation theory? What do you know about that?
Well, I saw her when she first debated Shockley on a show. It was called Black. Oh wow, I can't remember the entire name of the show, but at any rate, it was. It had Tony. Wasn't Tony Brown at that time? There were two brothers, I believe, at that time. And anyway, she debated Shockley, and what she maintained, Shockley was a person who was saying that black people were inferior, that we were chosen on the basis of docility, that the black... Getting a little feedback again, something. All right, so that what Shockley was saying is that, and also a guy named Jensen, they were saying that we were inferior. The black people, and particularly black Americans, were inferior. They were saying that we were chosen on the basis of strength and docility, and that this resulted in their being superior to us on IQ exams by 15 points. Not because they made the IQ exam, not because they stole your religion, not because they stole your morality, not because they worked you and they didn't educate you, but that they were superior on the exams they made after they stole your, everything that makes a person a human being. And I mean, it's a miracle if on their exam you still can't, if you scored anything. But this is what they were maintaining. And what Welsing said was that, you have to do that. That's something you have to do to compensate for your own feelings of inferiority. And the reason you have a feeling of inferiority, she said, is because you are unable, like the most of the world, you're a small percentage of the world, you're a small percentage of the world that cannot create, sufficient levels of melanin. And that as a result of that, you participate in certain delusional behavior. You'll marry a non-white person, and then you go through the delusion that you created the baby or the color in the baby, which you had nothing to do with. you try to state other people are inferior because you are compensating for your own sense and your own fear of genetic annihilation, she said, because, I'm just kind of giving in broad strokes the kinds of things she said, but what she pointed out was that people that the coding for the enzymes that were in the pathway of turning tyrosinase into dopamine and melanin, that sort of thing, were that they didn't have the enzymes to do that, and that it was that the enzymes, that the people who do have it, that it's a dominant feature. So that means that when they mate with another person, what's going to be expressed is that dominant gene. So the use of words like dominant and it created cognitive dissonance in them, and they created a furor. And she pointed out to them that she wasn't like just calling them names, or she was using the formal language of genetics. This idea of dominant and recessive, she didn't make that up. And if you're talking about skin color, that the coding for melanin is dominant, and that as a result of that, white people have gone on their killing frenzy and domination frenzy because they fear genetic annihilation. And other people have pointed out that they would cease to exist if they don't maintain a selective mating pool. In other words, if they don't keep to themselves and segregate and mate only with themselves, they'll disappear. Because the melanin, the genes you have that code for high levels of melanin, they're dominant. And so these are some of the things that Frances Welsing pointed out. She also talked about melanin as being something different from what they were saying. They were saying that melanin was a pigment. And what she pointed out was that the melanin was present in was in highest concentration in the most functional parts of the body. When you start talking about the parts of the body, the organs, the skin, the part of the brain, that's where you found melanin. She traced it back to the embryology, where when I was in medical school, they told us that the melanin served as was like a line, a cut. It was like a cutoff point. And what she pointed out is that the melanin was organizing, was organizing the nervous system. You know what I mean? You could say call something like a barrier or a border, but then you can also, if you look at it a different way, it's the thing that's organizing the development. And so, she introduced a lot of different concepts and was responsible really for some of the first melanin conferences they had, and many other people contributed to to the knowledge. They had melanin conferences. I remember a guy, Carol Barnes, Carol Barnes, that was his name, that did a whole thing on it. I even had a melanin T-shirt that had the structure of melanin on the in the front of the T-shirt. So Frances Welsing, when I mentioned her, she's one of the great black psychiatrists that that died really recently, within this decade, and she was one of our bright lights and one of the great theoreticians and a warrior, a warrior queen.
Yeah. I wonder, brother, can you tell me? I'm interested. What are your origins? Are you from New York, or did you go to school in New York, or what?
No, I was born in the South. Like a lot of people were born in the South. My mother came up to New York and stayed with some different relatives as I was growing up, and then I went to school. I started school actually in South Carolina, but it was like a preschool. But there I learned to read and some things like that. And so when I got up here and they sent me to school, I went to public school, and went to the specialized high school, Brooklyn Technical High School, and then to college, and then to medical school and did residency at Harlem Hospital and Montefiore. In terms of my training, my education, all of which are in New York.
Now, were you connected with University Hospital at some point in Newark?
Yes, University Hospital was one of the hospitals at UMDNJ. So when I went, it was called the College of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey. The one in New Jersey was called New Jersey Medical School. The one in Piscataway was called Rutgers Medical School. And then it developed a university status just as I was graduating, and then they became, now it's called Rutgers University Medical School. Mm-hmm. But it was still always over there. It had a network of hospitals that, the UMDNJ had a network of hospitals that we rotated through. There were hospitals like Mount Sinai and Newark, hospitals such as Martland Hospital. Now that whole complex there, but the UMDNJ was a university that had a network of medical. They used Jersey City Medical Center, a network of clinical sites that the doctors trained at. So I remember going through Jersey City. I was in Hackensack. I was in seems like I was in Hoboken. Some different places. A lot of different places. That network extends throughout the state, all the way into South Jersey.
Well, now, when you were a kid, when did you decide you were going to be a psychiatrist? And what did you think that was when you were growing up?
Well, I don't think that was when I made the decision. What I decided was that I was going to be a doctor. What happened is that I actually had the experience, because I stayed with different relatives. My mother was getting herself situated up here in New York, and I stayed with different relatives. One of my aunts, her father, her name was Young. Her maiden name was Gwen Young, and her father and uncle were like two of the first doctors in South Carolina, the Youngs. And when I stayed with her, I actually got to see a baby born and some things like that. And so from about the age of 4 or 5, I was thinking I was going to be a doctor. And so I actually have a picture of myself when I was with a doctor's set they brought me, because it was encouraged, reinforced. Your parents can, they can kind of direct the way the children are going to go. So they brought me a little thing. It had a little set of glasses that had a stethoscope and, some little plastic items. And as I said before, I have that picture right now. If we want to Zoom, I could show it to you. But now my mind I went a lot of different places in that journey. And I did a lot of things before I actually did return to that original concept. So I started out, I was going to be a mathematician. I started out as a math major, and then I left college when I turned 18 and went into the military. And then I returned and, was part of the students that worked to get Professor John Henry Clark there. And then when I majored in Black Studies there, that changed really. It turned the world upside down. The way I'd been looking at things was, I could see, and I mean, that's the way the truth is. There's an African proverb that a log can lay in the river for 100 years, but it's never going to become a crocodile. When you see a real crocodile, you know what's a log, So that happened, and then I think that at a certain point I became a psychology minor. Psychology is the study of the mind, the psyche, that sort of thing. And psychiatry has the iatral part in it, which means to heal. So the psych part, has to do with spirit, and the iatral part has to do with healing. And so I think that when I went to medical school, I was kind of looking at it as kind of a body carpentry. Dr. Clark was saying we need nation-building skills, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was saying we need a hospital, and all of those forces that led me. Of course, Garvey talked about us, and Booker T. Washington doing practical things. So the thing was, I think, the closest to the social sciences for me in medical school was psychiatry. So that's where you really decide what you're going to go into. I actually also did very well in OBGYN, but when I ultimately made the choice, I decided on psychiatry. And I asked Professor Clark, who by that time I had, when I was an undergraduate at Hunter, I had him for 16 credits. I asked him where I should do residency. He said Harlem Hospital, and so I did Harlem Hospital. And then, I did some other things, but, that's where, the idea came from parental, family influences, being in a lucky position of where I got to see a physician do the things that they do. And, just the second I made the connection between seeing that baby born and being torn between going into OB or in psychiatry, just at this second as we were talking. That's really interesting. Yeah, but those early experiences, you can, I think that what you did with education was really, you were on my show this week, and you described all of the things that I had studied and researched on a theoretical level, and you put all of those things into practice. I had to give a talk at an educational symposium that was done by some legislators here in New York, and I had laid out 5 things that I thought were necessary to kind of approach the trauma that our children experience in the public school system. So, one, I said we need to instill hope and make the students feel they have a future, because a lot of the experience that we have in these schools is the exact opposite. They take away your hope. There's no child that at 4 or 5 years old, you ask them what they want to be, and they say, I want to be a crackhead or anything like that. They don't, that's not really what's in their mind, those kinds of things. Those things are put into your mind, by a bad educational system. The nature abhors a vacuum. And so when they're not being educated in a way that's going to help them. I said we need more black teachers who have empathy and a shared cultural experience with the students. These are the things you did. You instilled hope in those students. You introduced them to people who modeled correct behavior for them. You introduced them to Amiri Baraka. You introduced them to John Henry Clark, to Yosef Ben Yakin, and you introduced them to Minister Farrakhan and Leonard Jeffries, and just all kinds of people that were excellent and that were warriors for our people. And then not only that, I saw the cleverness when you introduced them to William Kunstler, who validated the feelings they were having when he made that statement that he hated white people, because this was a white man saying it. So you did those kinds of things. You gave them things that instill hope. I said we need more black teachers who have empathy and a shared cultural experience with the students. Well, obviously you did that. You were one of those types of teachers. I said we need more out-of-school, real-world experiences in high school which expand the student's concept of what is possible. Experiences such as work-study programs in black business or black nonprofits, such as study abroad on the continent. And you did all those things. You took them and connected them through the conference call type setup to people all around the country. Not only the positive models, you showed them, let them hear and meet some of those people that were the negative people, the Ku Klux Klan and those sorts of things. And we need to open the school up for use by community groups that promote black culture, black history, black groups. You did all of that, and that addressed some of these problems like mass incarceration, police violence, those things. And you need to give the students a self-help attitude and a sense of competence through and all kinds of things. You had them interview the people. You did those kinds of things. But we can also do it with math teams, chess teams, that sort of thing. So you actually showed me a practical example of a teacher that did those things. I was fortunate enough that one of my early elementary school experiences with Regent Adelaide Sanford, who was a teacher at my elementary school, which was the Crispus Attucks was the Crispus Attucks School. She took that school from the lowest performing in the district to the highest performing in the state, highest performing urban school in the state. You want to talk about somebody that can talk about countering systemic racism, that's a person that can do it. There was any problem she encountered, she developed a solution for it. So she had, she had the black teachers, she had people that could, that had empathy for the students, and she had it herself, and she ensured that she hired those kind of people. But she had a lot of uncertified teachers. So what she did was she developed a certification course on her own, and she made sure that all those teachers got certified. She didn't get the students who were the best in the state. In fact, we lived in the Brevoort projects. The feeder school for PS21, Crispus Attucks School, was the Brevoort project. She took them and made them outperform students all over the state on the exams they made, the kind that Shockley wants to give you. They want to make the test and then declare your inferiority on the basis of your performance on their test after they do all those things. That reminds me of Bobby Wright, who talked about, he made the bullfight analogy. That there comes a moment which is called a moment of truth, and it's in that point that the bull for the first time really sees the matador. But before they get to that moment of truth, remember they send the picadors and these other people to torture the bull, to drain him of his energy, to drain him up, and then at that point they paint themselves up to be the big hero because they kill a bull with a sword. This is typical of their culture, and it's a perfect metaphor for what they do to us. We are born with anything. We certainly are not born inferior to anybody, and there are many who assert that we have certain superior, that we have a certain superiority. If you go and look at our culture for all these years, they still can't do things like build the pyramids, but we have that. We certainly, as I said before, are inferior to no one, but they put us through the experiences that will predicate inferiority, and then they point at you and say, look, you're not performing as well. Look, there's more of you in the jails. Look, there's more of you to do this and more of you to do that. Yeah, but you're the ones that gave us the inferior foods, the poisoned water. You put all of the pollution. You take your bus terminals and you put them in our areas. You take your toxic dumps, you put them in our areas. So you do all those things. You give us the lead paint. You do all that stuff to us, and then we still come out and outperform you. You know what I'm trying to say? And still outperform you. It's an interesting thing. But as I said before, you kind of went through those things in your when you taught in Newark schools. Now, here's one of the things that I want to say, which is that when I talked about we need more black teachers who have empathy and shared cultural experience, I don't think people realize how much racism plays a role in our education, in every experience that we have every day. I think a lot of people do. But there was a fact that was put out by the, let's see what it's called. It's the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. Who put that out? Not Dr. McIntosh. The Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. They pointed out, in fact, it was a black woman, a woman by the name of Hardiman, who did this research on this. Black newborn babies in the United States are more likely to survive childbirth if they are cared for by black doctors, but 3 times more likely than white babies to die when looked after by white doctors, a study has found. That's in the proceeding. I'm not saying that's the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. Now, if they do that with newborn babies, what do you think they're doing? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, what makes you, if they won't treat you right, what makes you think they're going to teach you right? So and you can see it all the time when this guy Eugene Lang with the students of PS 121 back in 1985, he promised at a graduation that everybody who finished that public school if they would graduate from high school, that their education would be paid for. He was a millionaire, right?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
That were 3 times more likely to graduate from college than their peers. So, it's just the racism part. People, I don't think they realize how much of a weight it is. Like it's like they race you after they tie a 100-pound weight to one of your legs, and then you still win. That definitely throws them into a state of cognitive dissonance. How does the Detroit all-girls team win the top prize in the chess tournament? You know what Detroit is like, how it's been devastated, and yet you get a teacher that is empathic, you get a teacher that's creative, and just provides them with the rudiments. They don't have all the money and stuff for the other people, and they go and they beat everybody else in the chess thing. So, this is one of the things that I think disturbs them so much. The propaganda, the brain injury that they promote. The promoters select these rappers and the people that are going to talk about killing people, that are going to promote prostitution and promiscuity, promote drug use and drug sales, promote alcohol. That actually, at any given time, there's always a rap song. Always. I've studied this. I've taken it and demonstrated to people. And it's going to promote drinking and drugging while driving. How do you get that accidentally? That 8 out of the 10 records are going to promote all of the risk factors for death, the violence, the tobacco, the disrespect, the drugs, the promiscuity, all those things. That 8 out of the 10 rap songs at all times are going to promote those things, and sometimes 10 out of 10. And that one of the records will promote all 8 at the same time. How does that happen by accident? It can't be an accident. That's not. I was a math major, remember, before. That's statistically impossible to be an accident. So when I first found that, I was actually driving a mother and her daughter from my daughter's house back to New York, and the radio was on. And this little child had the little cute little voices that they have like when they're 3, 4 years old. And she's singing all the words to this song called Shoulder Lean, and it's saying all kinds of things. The guy's talking about having an AK, my lay by banana, he's singing about sex, drugs, murder, promiscuity, prostitution, alcohol, all 8 were in that song. And that made me start taking the rap songs and studying them, like listing them. And anytime I had to give a speech, I would go to a place, like if I had to talk on that topic, I would after I had done the initial research, I would just take that day's songs. I'd go to Billboard and take the songs from that day, and always I got the same results. And on one occasion, I thought I hadn't gotten the same results, and it's because they had started making these records with a PG version, where you have, like in where instead of being everything is raw, they'll have a version which they change the word. And so the way I would figure out what was going on in the songs is I would go to a thing called Rap Genius and get a translation, really, because a lot of it, they have the privacy of a language. The teens have the privacy of the language, so they can be talking about things. When they're talking about brains, they're not talking about what you're talking about. Trust me. When I mean, I'm taking real terms that they use. So I went to Rap Genius, and when I would put in the song, a different song would come up, and I couldn't get the translate. And then all of a sudden I realized that, wait a minute, this is the same song. The song as it was played on the radio was called My Hitters, but the song that the young people were playing with, because they get their music from other places now, the actual name of the song was My, and was the big N word. And in the My Big N word, they had one of those little coded things for murder, which was you only live once. Like he had, he called his YOLO. So it was talking about a shotgun, and I didn't know that until I, went to Rap Genius and found what he was talking about. And then I had I thought that I had one day that I had to go speak somewhere, I thought that I'd found, look, one time they left off one of the risk factors. I don't have a song that has all 8. But once I got the translation, it had all 8. At any given time, they have one song that promotes all 8 of the risk factors for death that I laid out. So anyway, so this is the kind of weight that they put on us, and still, as I said before, we excel. But there's no guarantee that you're going to survive. Professor Clark points out that there are whole groups of people that Europeans have wiped out. He cites the Amerigos Indians. He cites, I believe he cited some people in the South Pacific. There are groups of people. There's nothing to say that you won't be wiped out. It's not magic now. You can't just keep the same way that food will produce a certain type of body. You can give people certain kinds of foods and their body will develop one way. You can give another type of food and develop another way. The same thing with your brain. You feed people violence and self-violence all day long, and you're going to get different. You're going to get bad results over time. By the age of 18, and this is according to the American Academy of Pediatrics, the average American has seen 200,000 acts of violence on TV, including 40,000 murders. And that was back in 2009. Now it's worse. If anything, it's worse 14 years later. That was the American Academy of Pediatrics in 2009. So what else do you want to talk about, Brother Williams? Are you still there?
Well, no. What I'm wondering then is, I noticed that you're very active in the struggle for awareness and consciousness among our people. And I attribute that to Adelaide Sanford and John Henry Clark. You were involved with a group called CMOTEP, which is calling for the uplift of black people and the struggle against oppression. What exactly is this group? What does that CMOTEP stand for, the initials of it?
Okay, so the initials stand for the Committee to Eliminate Media Offensive to African People. So while I was at Harlem Hospital, I met a lady named Betty Dobson, and she had an idea that she could do. So she was the director of public relations there. She had an idea that she could, really change a lot of the ways that we were being presented in the media if she could develop, a group of people who would write letters, who would do that sort of thing. And then there was another young lady by the name of Diane Glover who was at her church who was holding a series of lectures on, just black culture and black history. And so they did one on media, and Betty was there, and they had Utrice Lead and a couple of other, Mark Riley. These are broadcasters, were broadcasters in New York, and a couple of other people. I think Randall Pinkston, a few of them. And Utrice Lead put out the challenge, instead of just having like a forum about this kind of thing, why don't you form like a group to do such a thing? But now, as I said before, Betty had been talking about that sort of thing already. So we got together a group, and, we started studying the media. We would take all of the clippings from the papers to see, and, we started discovering certain kinds of things. We discovered, for instance, that in the paper that has all of the black people were reading the most, which was the New York Post, which is associated with Fox 5 and those kinds of things, historically associated with it, that on 92% of the pictures in that paper, black people were represented in the areas of sports, crime, and entertainment. And in the Daily News, it was 80-something%. And in the New York Times, it was 77%. And then we discovered that, at a year that Jesse Jackson, because we were founded in 87, in 1988, remember Jesse Jackson was making a run for the presidency, and that we didn't have, we went through months and months without even one article on black politics. And, Queens is full of black, they have councilmen and assemblymen and this sort of thing, but we were always covered in the areas of sports, crime, and entertainment. So what brought things to a head Well, the first thing we did was Betty made a collage of of a lot of the front pages. And we had things with black men in chains, baby, it always represented all the social ills and that sort of stuff on the front page. And so we contacted the editor of a paper called Newsday that was out on Long Island and in
Long Island, yeah.
And, I'm sorry I have to stop again. Please carry it for a few minutes. I'm sorry I have to stop.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Okay, so as we move along, we're going to have to organize to have questions and answers. Who would like to ask the first question?
I would.
Would that be though, or get Greg? Greg?
I think I'm back. Are you there?
Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm back. Are you okay? Can you hear me? All right. So, we Europeans, the way they're going to do it, you're never going to write. You're never going to go into a meeting with them. You're never going to go. They will search the basement and find a housekeeping staff or whatever it is. They're going to try to put a flat catcher in between you and them. So they picked a guy. They sent a guy. I remember he was a reverend. I won't even try to say his last name. But they sent him said he would come. They wanted us to come and meet with him. We said, no, you can come to us. So they came. They sent this guy, a brother, and he came. And we had maybe about 150 people. They were all members. And we were sitting in a room. And, we had our statistics. We had everything. And he talked to us. And then when he finished, he tried to, a few of the little tricks they use. And, the people shut him down. And so he said, okay, he was going to set up a meeting with the editors. No, he didn't say that part. He said, listen, they're not going to believe this when I get back. They're not going to believe, what you. And so he went back and told them about us, and they had us come there. And so we came there, and we met with them. And, we came armed with our statistics and stuff. And Les Payne, ironically, Newsday, which didn't really have any black writers, they had one black editor, which was Les Payne, who was a very conscious person. And he was there in the room. So when we would start attacking them or, like I should say, engaging in dialogue with them, whenever we were going down a path that was really pay dirt, he would kind of nod his head or smile or give some sort of indication so we knew the ways to go. So we had we broke down our stuff about how often they represented us in the three areas of sports, crime, and entertainment. And actually at that meeting, the same way like I remembered about the OBGYN thing. I had a new insight at the meeting, so we were showing about the sports, crime, and entertainment, and we took all the pictures from that day. And the guy said, well, then, do you mean to tell me that you think sports are negative? And I said, no, but since you mention it, let's look at the sports pictures for today. And when we looked through them, they had things about Dow Strawberry's alcoholism or somebody else's drug use. The pictures were negative. So it wasn't only that we were covered in only three areas of life. Remember, Francis Wilson talked about and Neely Fuller talked about the 9 people areas of activity. Let me see if I can do it. It was labor law, politics, education, entertainment, economics, religion, sex, and warfare. I think that's them. I might have missed one. But they only covered us in 3 areas, which were a subset of like really 2 areas. Really entertainment, okay. And so what happened was we said no, but since you asked the question, let's take a look. We took a look, and the pictures were negative. So, in other words, not only were they covering us in this narrow spectrum, they were also covering us in a negative way. The polarity of the pictures was negative. And then in addition, the writers were white. So we were getting and largely white males, so we were getting our news. They were representing our community from a narrow perspective across a narrow spectrum with a negative polarity. And so when we finished that meeting, they made promises to not do certain, when we laid out the things that were wrong that they were doing, they laid those out, and then they also agreed to hire more blacks and that sort of stuff like that. So that was our first thing. The next thing that got us up and running was we had a marathon in New York, in which a black runner, for the first time in some years in the New York Marathon, well, now they win every year, but back then, this was in about 88, 87 maybe 87, maybe in October of 87. A guy by the name of Ibrahim Hussein won the New York Marathon. And they did something that was for the first time in the history of sports broadcasting. They were talking about, as he was winning, how the second place runner, who was a white runner, who they thought would soon overtake him. And they were doing that so long until he had left this guy in the dust. They had the cameras on the second place guy as he finished the race. They didn't broadcast the black man winning the New York Marathon. Well, you never know what's going to rile our people up. It's like in South Africa, when they did something to mess with the beer halls that the sisters were making money from. The sisters had, they said you struck a rock. They hit you hit the wrong bone, and it's just like the Newark riots or the Newark rebellions or those things. You never know what is the thing that's going to spark. Police kill people every day. When they killed George Floyd, that sparked something. And when Ibrahim Hussein, they didn't film him coming across that finish line, those people in that church, they were all riled up. They wanted to do something. And so we went down to ABC, which was the station that had broadcast it. And, they came there, some of us had a background, in struggle. They came there in their furs, their suits, their spats, their vests, and everything. They were all dressed up. The police went, who are these people? Who are these people? They didn't know who, and that shows you the degree of infiltration because they had no idea who these people were. And, we took the time to also protest for Gil Noble, who was one of our giants, a broadcaster, somebody that you had with your students at the school. And by the time we had finished, they wanted to meet with us. They had said before they would never meet with us, and they wanted to meet with us. And then, again, we got certain concessions. They brought Ibrahim Hussein back to the United States. They paid for him to do a tour around the city, and they something that should have been done when he won the race, they did afterwards. And we did, well, before they didn't do it just from the demonstration. After the demonstration, we had something called a blackout, in which we encouraged people not to look at ABC for the whole month. That was Black History Month of February. I guess that would be 1988. And, we got things all over, and we got about 10,000 signatures on a petition of people pledging they wouldn't watch ABC. So after we finished those kinds of things, of course, ABC made concessions. Gil Noble credited us with keeping them from putting him off the air. And we did other things like that. We had a post-buster campaign. So, this is a long answer to a short question, but those are the kind of, we initially started out, we were more in-your-face, on-the-street type organization as we got older. Betty is 89 now. I'm 75 now. We probably focus more on education, but we still get out in the streets sometimes also. But that was the Committee to Eliminate Media Offensive to African People. We've basically taken on all of the different we actually were responsible for getting Bob Grant and Jay Diamond off of the air. There was a hate radio host on ABC, and we got them driven off. They went to Channel 9 for a while. Eventually, they brought them back, but we did drive them off at one particular point. And in fact, Wilbert Tatum of the Amsterdam News, the publisher Amsterdam News, credited us with dropping the Post circulation by 200,000 with our Post-Buster campaign. We essentially went from church to church to church and got people to swear or pledge that they wouldn't buy the New York Post. And they actually did it. There was a point when you would call black radio in, I guess, the late 80s, the early 90s, that instead of saying the name of the New York Post, they would say that racist rag. So we drove them into bankruptcy. Before they went to bankruptcy, they began falsifying their circulation. Because people were their consciousness was raised. We say you're going to pay for your own degradation. This paper that represents you this way. So eventually, they went bankrupt, And ironically, a black man in collaboration with a Jewish guy named Hirschfield, they bought the Wilbur Tatum of the Amsterdam News. They put in the highest bid for the Post. So for like 24 hours, they owned the Post. The workers at the Post, in protest to this, actually seized the building. They seized the building and they put out an edition of the paper called the Teardrop Issue, because their logo had Alexander Hamilton on the cover. That's ironic. It's a racist paper. And he had they had him with a teardrop coming out of his face. But eventually they did not sell the paper to those two. They sold the paper back to Rupert Murdoch, who had lost the paper some years before when he had violated one of the FCC rules. There was a rule against them owning a major station and a newspaper in the same state. And they had violated that, and so he had to give up the paper. But the guy who owned the paper at this particular point was called Calico, Peter Calico. Peter Calico, after black people tried to buy the paper, lateraled it off to Murdoch, and Murdoch, was allowed to keep the paper even though he was in violation of those rules. And in fact, we took busload down to the FCC, and I think we met with a guy named Quelo, who was the head of the FCC at that particular time, and that's the thing about power. When you have power, you can, you basically, if you can have power, but when you exercise power, that's when you can do what you want. And and so they just, they didn't even come up with, well, we changed the rules or nothing. They just let Murdoch, and when he came back, he bought that. He had that at a certain point. He had, I think, WOR, WPIX. Maybe I may have the stations wrong, but he had several. He didn't just have one newspaper in one station. He had, multiple papers and multiple stations. All which was against the FCC rules. So it's like fighting an infection. If you don't eliminate the bugs, the ones that are left are stronger than ever, and they multiply, and they give you what's called a super infection. That's the state we're in now. We didn't eliminate the media offensive to African people. We irritated the media offensive to African people. And now hate radio is or hate stations are a rule rather than the exception. The ways that they portray black people, to me, I just can't even imagine that black people are looking at these assaults on their culture and the way that they represent us on TV. Every single channel. There's certain words, and I'm not going to go into them now, but there's certain things that if you say what it is, it's going to be a black character. There's certain scenes they show that is always going to be a black character involved. If it's not all black characters, it's going to be a black character with a white character, but it's things that they say. But see, that's how they don't really think those things are good. Because they can tell you they think those things are good, but when they represent you as it, they don't think it's good. So anyway, that's the history of CMOTAP. That's a brief, overview of what CMOTAP was involved with.
Okay, but I'm going to mention the fact that you're going to have your meeting on the 23rd, Saturday.
Thank you so much. Yes, on the 20. Let's see. No, not the 20th. Oh, yeah, you and I. Yes. We're going to have a Zoom meeting with you on the 23rd of September, and we're going to go just more into what we went on to a radio program. We're going to let you kind of tell us about your methods of improving the education of our children. As you say, combating systemic racism. Because if you educate the children, you're combating systemic racism. That's it right there, because it's systemic racism that keeps you from educating them in the first place.
Yeah,
what I did. Zoom, people interested in that can just shoot an email to drcemotap@gmail.com. That's DR, no periods, nothing. drcemotap@gmail.com, and we'll send you the links for that Zoom. Mm-hmm.
So about that, now the people who are with this podcast, Grown Folk Talking Network, The network you're on, the Grown Folk Talking Network. I wanted to make sure they knew about that because they may want to. I think some of them even tuned in that day. Matter of fact, I know a lot of people who said they had tuned in and were on waiting to ask questions.
Yeah, and they didn't put the calls through. It's not the first time that it's happened, and there are times that we've had several people to call in, and they call in and they say that we have no calls. I confronted the engineer about it. I just asked him about it. He said, there were no calls on the board, that sort of thing. Well, I guess it's magic that when we have certain shows, the callers disappear. But we still had a couple of calls. We had a couple of calls anyway, at least one call. And
one call. One of the ladies in the audience here is the only person that had a chance to ask a question.
Mm-hmm. But one of our CMO chat members told me that he called and he just held on. And as I said before, it's happened before. I've had it with multiple people were unable to get on. Now, they overwork that engineer a lot because they don't have any money and that sort of thing. So it could have been that, maybe he has to do one thing and then go to the board with the phones, and it's just, might have been a little too much for him or something like that. But we had an excellent conversation and lots of listeners. People have commented on, on the show. We have a pretty big audience and pretty good audience, and my show does a share of getting donations for the station, to keep it on the air.
Okay, so will this be the same format as the Wednesday format?
The program, the FM radio program we have is that what you asked?
No, the one on Saturday.
WBAI. The one on Saturday won't be on the air. It'll be a Zoom meeting. It's our regular CMO meeting. We have a CMO meeting every fourth Saturday, and when we don't do it by Zoom, we do it live. This is a Zoom. And then in October, we're going to have our annual dinner issue table, and we have Brother Browder, Tony Browder is going to be there, and Dr. Ma'at, Dr. Oya Ajwa Ma'at is going to be there.
Yeah, well, those two people, Browder and Ma'at, well, I sure would like to have those people come on this podcast. Can you put a good word in for me?
You could tell them that I referred you, and I can give you their contact. Sure.
Okay, well, give me their contact and their numbers. You can text it to me or something.
It'll be a contact email. It'll be contact email addresses. I can certainly share with
you.
Oh,
that's great. Yeah, because this audience would really enjoy them. Yeah. Okay, so let's have the other folk here raise some questions for our esteemed brother, J.C. McIntosh, Ph.D. I mean, medical doctor. I'm sorry.
I'm not a Ph.D. brother. I'm an M.D.
An M.D.
Yes, sir.
I corrected it.
Yeah, no problem. It's just who gave the first doctorate, but but I just wanted to be correct. My wife is the Ph.D. I'm the M.D.
Mm-hmm. Is your daughter a doctor as well?
No. My daughter's a mathematician. She teaches math at the college level, but she had an ABD, with all but a dissertation.
Oh, okay.
Mathematics, yeah.
Who do we have here asking a question?
One of my sons is a JD. That's the one that's named after John Henry Clark and Malefia's son. Yeah,
mm-hmm. Okay.
Hi,
Ivadane. Okay.
How are you?
Greetings. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. Thank you, Mr. Sanford, for bringing on Dr. McIntosh, and I've enjoyed listening to everything. Side note, I went to school with Otis Blackwell's son, So when you spoke about him, that was a very, very familiar story because we were friends with the older brothers as well. But it's amazing how
he did write "Don't Be Cruel." By the way, he did write "Don't Be Cruel."
Well, people are not listening. People aren't listening. But I'm just grateful to hear everything that is happening and everything that's being realized, and that we're able to express it publicly like this for those who don't know, because no one knows it all, but we can take all of this information and fill in a lot of empty holes and get moving. As I mentioned the other day, it would be so good if we could find a way to provide this education. I love the pandemic because it taught us the power of virtuality. So, yes, we're taxpayers and it should be in the school system, but virtuality is powerful. It can be available 24 hours a day and globally. So no matter who and what time, access to it is always going to be there. So formulating a program that's accessible like that would be great. If it gets into the schools, okay, that's great too. The more reinforcement we have, the better off we are. The more you get it, the more you receive it, and the more you believe it. So I have, when you talk about psychiatry and mental health and children, and I'm working on a third book titled Mind Health for Minors. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to put something in it. I've opened it up for people to put information. Again, no one knows everything. I just know that we need to understand the dynamics of how children's minds are working based on what they're being taught, whether it's direct or through observation. People don't realize children are observing everything, and they pick it up, and then they transform it into what they want it to be. We need to understand how they are working and what they're working with, and how we can help guide that as adults. So I thank you for coming on, and I look forward to following the show. It was the WBAI on Thursdays?
Yes, ma'am.
WBAI on Thursdays.
No,
thank you.
Wednesdays. No. I'm sorry. Wednesdays at 2 p.m.
Wednesdays at 2 p.m. WBAI. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And you can listen online, or is it 99 point? What's the call numbers?
Right. It's 99.5 FM New York, and if you're not in New York, it also streams to WBAI.org.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, sister.
Hello, this is Deborah.
Greetings, Sister Deborah.
I'm looking forward to hearing more and more of you and learning more. I just want to say thank you for coming on, and I'm just going to chime in on Wednesday and listen on Wednesday so I can get a broader understanding of what angle you're coming from and what you're doing, how you're pushing forward and helping others. So I just thank you for this opportunity to hear you.
Thank you, sister. Thank you for listening. But whatever, that's good. Listen and enjoy.
And learn. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay.
Next. Who's next?
Might have been it.
That's not it. Okay, well,
nobody had a question.
I'm sure they do. Now, of your clientele, what percentage of your clientele?
I'm retired.
Oh, you're retired. So when you were, before you retired,
I'm doing some minor consulting now. 5 but with an agency which I did work in the past, and I just is very limited. It's patients that are in a particular type of housing.
Well, what does it look like for the future? We don't seem to be getting those numbers up from 5% to anything. I mean, it just fluctuates between 4 and 5%, and that's unbelievable because black people need therapy too, and they can't get the therapy they need effectively from people who don't know their culture or can't understand their mores and so on and so forth. Will you address that?
Yeah, I can't answer you. I don't know the statistics that you're using. It sounds like a statistic that used to be for board certified psychiatrists. That was put out by the American Board of Psychiatry. But there are both psychiatrists and people who are in those days they had board eligible, board certified, and that sort of thing. So. They do have a shortage of psychiatrists, but there are also other professions such as psychologists. And as I said before, what I would be called now is a psychiatric physician, licensed. I completed a residency, that sort of thing. But that was a long time ago when I completed residency. So I think.
Well, do you miss the work? Do you miss it?
No.
Okay, how long have you been retired?
Well, that's an interesting story. I first retired in 2013. All right, so that's 10 years. But I was kind of, like the guy in The Godfather. I try to get out, you drive me back in. There are people, people that worked with me before that when they moved to different places, they kind of recruited me to come to the place to do like part-time work. And then ultimately that happened a couple of times. And then finally in 2019, I definitely made the move to taper off, and I stopped in 2020.
It went a long time. That's really quite a while.
One of those places, actually, that's what I'm doing now, is I work virtually for a place that specializes in providing supportive housing for formerly homeless people. And I just do 5 hours a week virtually. I'm not working, I'm not like going to a site and seeing patients and that kind of thing anymore.
So what do you say?
Now I do have a question.
Yeah, go on.
Sure.
I'm sorry.
Go on.
I did notice that a lot of times when people come into these shelters and stuff like that, that they are not getting any type of evaluation. So are you evaluating the people that coming into this shelter that you're talking about?
Well, what you're describing is actually what I mainly do, which is that for people who live in certain state programs, they have to have an evaluation that says they qualify for, so very few acute cases am I handling now. I'm not handling people that I have to send to the hospital or have to write prescriptions for, that sort of stuff like that. Occasionally I still do, occasionally I have to do that because somebody is in a crisis. But yes, they are evaluated. There's a whole packet that they should have. Well, I'm not talking about shelters now. I'm talking about this is an agency that we call ourselves a Housing First agency. Housing prevents hospitalization, incarceration, victimization, and can prevent homelessness itself. So Housing First, the idea is that people have all kinds of problems when they're homeless, but the best way to treat it is to first put them in housing and then build the services around them, the services that they need. And they can need all kinds of services. They may need substance services. They may need health services. They may need, a home attendant. They may need all kinds of things. But the first thing is get them off the street, get them out the shelter, put them in housing. And then say that again.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'll share it with you afterwards.
So, I'm not representing that agency right now. That's why I'm not like saying names and that sort of stuff like that. So the people in some of these programs, they have to have authorization to remain there. And so I evaluate the people to say which, they have to need something called restorative services, which, really is like rehabilitative services. Now, I'm not speaking about drug rehabilitation, but in general, they always, they generally always do.
That process is the process of them thinking, right?
Say that again.
I said you're talking about their needing therapy for their process of the way they're doing things. Like some people needing to break cycles, so they have to realize what those things are. So that's kind of the type of therapy, so that they can be able to move forward in a more positive and be direction and be more stable, right?
Correct. Really, the goal is for the person to be independent and to be able to, go into housing. But there's a lot of people that are homeless, a significant proportion of them are people who have had mental illness, and in addition to that, the majority of the mentally ill are not in shelters or in housing, supported programs. The majority of people who suffer from major mental, they're incarcerated in places around the country, and that's one of the things that it's a strange certificate, a strange statistic, but real. So we're dealing with people who have been taken off of the streets or got themselves off of the streets. Sometimes they're going into a shelter, and the shelter refers people. And that sort of thing. And then the ultimate goal, a significant number of those people are able to move into permanent housing. In fact, the housing at this agency is permanent. It's not transitional housing or anything like a shelter. Okay. So this is permanent housing. They can stay there. Most of the people have they have several kinds of layers. They have some congregate housing, but most of these people are people who are like in kind of independent housing, independent, but they're visited by a case manager a certain number of times. This case manager kind of coordinates their care. If people have mental illness, a lot of times they can live independently, but during times of crisis or times of an exacerbation of their illness, they may need to go into the hospital. They may need to have a visit with their outpatient provider. They may need to, they may have a medical issue going on, and they may need help with those kinds of things. So that's what the case managers are for. But then some of the people move to the position of where they don't need anything, and that they just had hit a bump, and after they got support, they were able to move on. When you say homeless, it doesn't mean anything except that the person doesn't have. It doesn't mean they're mentally ill. It doesn't mean anything except the person doesn't have a house. They don't have a place to live. You can't really lump everybody in the same category. There was a guy, Albert Postell, who came before Judge Thomas Motley on charges of unlawful entry. And he told the judge, he said, I graduated from Harvard Law School in 1979. And Postell, responded after his rights were read. He said, so did I. I remember you came out. These were probably two members of classmates at one of America's top law schools. Alongside, guess who else was in the class? Chief Justice John Roberts and former Wisconsin Senator Russ Feingold. So, when you say homeless, it doesn't mean anything except the person doesn't have a house. But there are a significant number, percentage of people who do have other health problems and mental health problems that contributed to their becoming, So and if you're talking about, a lot of celebrities have these major disorders also. Carrie Fisher, Jimi Hendrix, Brian Wilson, Ernest Hemingway, Von Damme. All of these people suffer from bipolar illness. Kurt Cobain, Ted Turner, Macy Gray. Of course, we know historically people like Vincent Van Gogh. And, the stigma has to be removed from these things. And people need help. They don't need stigmatization,
Definitely. The reason why I asked the question that I asked is because in 2019. I gave up my place, and I had custody of my grandkids, and I went to stay somewhere, and it didn't work out, for me. So instead of me going to stay with somebody else, I refused to do that. I said, well, I'm rock bottom. I'll go in the shelter. So when I went into the shelter, we had to share a room. And what I noticed is the people that were coming in the room, nobody had really been evaluated, because as time went on, then you could see that they were having different issues, to the point that, my counselor would say to me, are they sending them in the room for you to counsel them? I said, I don't know, but I'm going to have to start getting paid for this, because this is a lot of work. You know what I'm saying? But I would see that they were dealing with a lot of issues that I felt like should have been noticed already. But then some people carry themselves in such a way that you really won't know unless you spend more time with them. Like, for instance, one of the ladies was saying, well, I don't know why they bring all of these immigrants here from another country and talking about and all of these people with HIV, and she just was like, every time she would make her bed up, she studied spreading the bed down, flattening it down. I mean, like every 2 minutes, you sweeping, you cleaning. I mean, it was a lot of alerts, you know what I'm saying, were out. And then, like, when she thought nobody was watching, the things she was saying and doing, too. I mean, it was like a lot of red flags. And so I was like, I noticed that they don't do screening when you come into a shelter. So I'm saying if they have that type of program, then I'm just thinking that they must be extreme cases, because I've seen a few people like that. I mean, really, they had their own thing going on mentally, and it took some time.
There's a lot of reasons. Sometimes people have pre-existing conditions, and sometimes the stressors that they face while they're homeless, including poor diets and poor nutrition. A lot of those things can lead people that had no prior condition to, experience mental illness. In addition to that, the violence that is rampant against homeless people, is, will also cause people to have certain traumatic mental issues, things like PTSD. And so there's a lot of reasons why there's such a high prevalence of mental illness among people who are homeless, as if the trauma of being homeless itself is not enough to cause. Mm-hmm.
Because they really need better counselors, too, to deal with these people that's coming into the shelters, because they're really they need to be trained, really, because they don't know how to treat these people at all and how to interact with them, and the level of respect is just none, So it was really sad. So you really have to, if you go into anything like that, you really got to know who you are, you know what I'm saying, because they really don't know how to deal with people. They really do need to be trained. So it's nice to know that they do have a program like that that's going on. And I did say to someone in another podcast at another time, we were talking about the housing issue or whatever, and it was like, basically the thing is teach a man how to fish, and he'll become a fisherman. You don't have to continuously take care of him. And it was like, talking about the issue in Maui, like, the people buying up the land, and we said some people can go out there. Some people are going out there buying housing and putting housing up like that. But someone was saying, I wouldn't buy them a house. That's something I wouldn't do. And so it's interesting that you're saying they're putting them in permanent house, because I said that's my suggestion. Sometimes you have to let a person become stable. You have to stabilize them and then deal with the issues. And that sounds like exactly what you're saying that this group is doing. They're making sure that they're stable, and then they're dealing with the issues, because then you don't have to worry about them again, because you're dealing with every little intricate part of what they're dealing with. You know what I'm saying? So now they can become stable. And this is exactly what I was saying to them. And so it's a good thing to hear that other people have came to that conclusion and actually are putting it in action. And the last thing I wanted to say is that one of the things that we have a problem, like you said, the stigma, people don't want to be associated with any type of service where that they're going to get mental health services at all, and especially our men. And it's sad because they really just, a lot of them need someone to talk through things with, and they need to vent, get some things out and deal with some things that they feel ashamed of or whatever, which is causing them to go in this vicious circle, and they cannot break free. And that's what I'm dealing with, a lot of people that I know that feel trapped in their circle, and they proud, and they haven't had people that they feel like they can trust, and they definitely too proud to go to the the professional help.
So,
Yes.
if I may, hi.
Yes.
So, Zipporah, as you say that, so Dr. McIntosh, I have a book, Mind is to Mental as Teeth are to Dental, and we all have a mind. We all have a mind, and it's your state of mind. And so, as Deborah, you were mentioning, if people would understand that your mental health could be great, wonderful, ecstatic, joyful, great, good, not so good, in need of attention. I suggest to people, find a therapist while you're good, because then that therapist knows you good. Just in case life throws you a bad apple, you have someone who knows you're good. I came to appreciate psychiatry a bit more watching Chicago Med and the psychiatrist on Chicago Med. And he said medicine, psychiatry medicine is good for the soul. It's medicine for the soul. And it made me realize that there are some acute situations where medication needs to be prescribed so that the chemical balance can happen. Because I was really against medication. I was more for psychology than psychiatry. But sometimes you do need a chemical balance, something that's going to bring you forward, bring you back. But I definitely recommend to people, get a referral for a therapist while you are in your best, because we could all use it. Nothing like talking to someone who's not in your circle, because one of the things that trouble me is when someone sees a psychiatrist and tells their story, or therapist, and tells their story. You don't know how true that story is, because it's their story based on where they are on that day. And then sometimes the professional doesn't speak to anyone else in the circle. So you don't know the accuracy. So knowing the accuracy of that person who now is in need, knowing the accuracy of their story is questionable, because it could not really be all true, But I do have an appreciation for it. I've learned my medicine from TV, so please don't be offended when I said from Chicago Med. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But, yeah, that is my recommendation. And can you just, and I know this is not a session right now, but I learned that dopamine, that too much can cause Parkinson's and too little could cause schizophrenia? Or do I have it backwards?
Well, too little is what is happening in Parkinson's. And really it's the balance between what people believe is that it's the balance between dopamine and acetylcholine, that balance might be what's happening. Because when you look at certain areas of the brain, you can see them depleted of the black stuff that was in them. So with Parkinson, it's a movement disorder. The schizophrenia, when you say too much, well, I guess that would come from the idea that we use dopamine blockers in order to fix it. You stop, as you said before. When you say too much, it's a question of where is it? In the synapse, which is the connection between the nerves. We do use things that block it to work on schizophrenia, but I don't think anybody has a real handle on exactly what what is caused by schizophrenia. But you did have it. In the way you were stating it, I think you had heard it. It was the opposite.
It was the opposite. Okay, thank you.
Little, yeah. But again, it depends on where you're talking about. If you're talking about in the synapse, I think it was the opposite. The synapse being the space between the units. Okay.
I have a show on this network, and last week I decided I wanted to do a panel discussion with medicine and with medical professionals as well as holistic professionals. So if it's okay, I'll reach out to you to see if you're available for that, because the general public needs to know about their bodies. They need to know what we don't know, because no one's really telling us until we need it. But if we can get that information ahead of time, just different information on all levels, then we could prevent a lot of things from happening. So if it is okay, I'd like to reach out to you. And thank you.
Okay. I did want to say one thing with respect to when you were saying the too little. As I said before, it depends on where you're talking about. So, I don't know if there are people are measuring the dopamine in the brain and stuff, but it depends on what parts you're talking about and everything, because there are people that are saying too little dopamine causes schizophrenia. But then if it's too little, maybe then the blocking of it is putting more in the synapses. I don't know. But, it was not having enough dopamine that I'm aware of as being related to Parkinson's.
Thank you. I'll do some more investigation. I don't know the categories of the brain. I just remember hearing that. And so you've defined it a bit more, and I will look into it. I thank you.
Yeah, the Parkinson's develops in patients with an 80% or greater loss of dopamine producing cells in the substantia nigra. Remember I told you the black area? The black area, the black area in the base of the brain is called the striatum nigra, and the cells, the substantia nigra. So it's the black cells, and those cells, when they deplete, they lose the color. And when you have 80% or greater loss of dopamine producing cells in the substantia nigra, that's when you get Parkinson's. So that, to me, that's too little. You understand? When you lose the cells.
Is that when they talk about the white matter and the gray matter? Is that the same?
No, the white matter and the gray matter has to do. The white matter and the gray matter has to do with the myelinated nerve fibers, which are white, and the unmyelinated, which would be called wait a minute. The gray matter is in your cerebrum. The gray matter is your cerebrum. That's what they mean by gray matter. But the white matter is the myelinated cells. That's the cells that have the fatty sheath on them.
Thank you. I'll do more research.
Say yes, I would.
The gray matter that you see mainly in the cerebral cortex is gray because it doesn't have the myelinated axons. Man, I'm not trying to talk this kind of talk. I'm just saying myelinated axons means the nerve cells or the nerve cells bodies that have a coat on the outside. The coat on the outside is called myelin. Okay, and that's found more in the the center of the brain. But on the outer edge, that's where the gray matter is. and that's neuronal cell bodies. White matter consists of myelinated axons. Axons are just a part of the cell. That's the stems of the cell. You understand? The cell has a sheet, a coating, which is like the insulation on wires for myelin. It's a fatty kind of material. And when you the parts of the brain where that is exposed, those are the myelinated areas. That's called white matter. And the gray matter is really the bodies of those cells, which may not have that sheath around them.
Okay, so that could be So when MRIs have done, they can tell what might be causing the disorder based on the amount of white and gray.
No, for you, like what's happening is you're making statements, and the statements are not, in my opinion, are not phrased in a way that is going to lead to somebody knowing something. Because in other words, you state it rather than ask a question, because the person might not use those words to describe what was going on with an MRI. There's sometimes where pieces of where there's less mass that you can find in people with certain kinds of disorders. Like, in other words, some of the cells have atrophy, and that atrophy might be associated with certain types of things. But like you like going too far.
Deep.
Yeah. Like somebody say to you, I'm just trying to think of something. Like the other thing is that everybody doesn't. I would say that the majority of medicine right now is going with this with the biological etiology for schizophrenia, but it hasn't always been thought to be that way. And in reality, usually most disorders of any kind have a part that's from the biological part, and then they'll also have a part that has to do with the environment. Because you can have twins, in identical twins with schizophrenia raised apart, you have like a 75% concordance. In other words, 75% of the people of the schizophrenic twins, identical twins raised apart, there's a 75% concordance as to whether or not they're going to have schizophrenia or not. Now, people say, well, does that prove biological, or does that prove the etiological? Does that prove nature or nurture? And the answer is it proves both, because certainly 75% concordance is bigger than you would have with a random person in the society. 75% of people that they're not going to have. So if you're identical twins, 75% of them raised apart have schizophrenia. That definitely shows that there's a biological part, but it also shows that there's a environmental part, because identical twins are genetically the same. So if they're genetically the same, you should have 100% concordance if it was a genetic cause. Do you understand? If it was a purely genetic cause, you should have 100% concordance in twins raised apart. Since you only have 75% concordance, it does tell you there's certainly a biological part, there's certainly a genetic part, but it's also an environmental part, because otherwise they'd have 100%. So it's a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of people that pay a lot of attention to the neurons and neurotransmitters and that sort of thing, but I would say that a lot of that stuff is not proven. It's not, even when you're using things about chemical imbalance and so on and so forth, there's a whole school of people that want to say, well, then tell me what the percentages are. They used to try to fix certain things by measuring the amounts of particular neurotransmitters, but it hasn't borne out, in my opinion, to be like that exact a science yet, although they're trying to get there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your information. Thank you.
That was a great example, nature and nurture. That was great. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I wonder if there's anyone else that likes to ask a question. You blow your chance. If you don't ask a question here and you go away wondering about it,
I'd like to.
Yes.
Yes, I really am enthused by what I'm hearing. This is my first opportunity to talk with Dr. McIntosh, although many times I'm sure he remembers Minifu from New Jersey. He had always promised me to go to CEMOTAP, but somehow I never got there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. From POP,
yeah.
from POP, your People's Organization.
That's right, exactly. And he had also worked with Ron Karenga in getting the, of course, Kwanzaa celebration started, and at that time was on the West Coast, and of course they expanded. So, at some point, I always want to bring up his name so people remember him as he has passed on to the ancestors. So I thank you. And I wanted to say I listened to the Zoom discussion with regard to the 200-plus rappers who had somehow been returned to the ancestors also during this period, starting with 2020. And I looked at messages, and that was mentioned earlier, or mismessages, or miseducation, or misimaging that our children are subjected to. And I read just this week an article about how some of the youth are indulging in TikTok and Reddit and other streams, and they're picking up the concept that they can be well known and perhaps impressive to their peers if they are denigrating and being bigots and racist and passing on information, even just about their peers or their classmates' appearances and that kind of thing. And in one case, it was talking about a lawsuit that the parents put out of some black students in a mixed-race school. I don't know the location. But what had happened was one of the young men who was facing domestic violence and the breakup in his home thought that it was right for him to create messages that he put together showing what he called a nappy-headed girl, and then at some point the gorilla and that kind of thing. And when the girl found out, this was passed around on Instagram, she thought she could solve it herself, but it wound up being a lawsuit. Now, fast forward to say, I would hope that there are some more people who are looking at how we address what our adolescents are being exposed to, because I don't think the parents know. I'm a grandparent. I know I don't know. And how to positively address our children as they continue to work on those media screens and social media apps and so forth. And secondly, I wanted to say that I'd hope there is some way, and perhaps we know and can share how to address how police forces are dealing with people experiencing a mental illness, because too many and too often now we hear of a family or somebody calling a distress call about a person who might have boarded himself into a place or that kind of thing, or is displaying bizarre behavior, only to have the police show up and then the person 2 or 3 minutes later is dead. So I'd like to know about that. And this may be overload, but I just wanted to suggest, if someone does know, please share with us any programs that address our young children and future physicians, future psychologists programs in their schools or in their communities. Because I remember the story of the 3 doctors, the 3 young men who started out in school and made pledges to themselves and were able to earn their medical degrees from UMD&J. I say that because often the young people whom I talk to had never heard their stories, and maybe they would be inspired to know that there were 3 friends who came from, poor beginnings, who were successful in completing their medical degrees at UMD&J because it's local, and because they weren't from families of professional people, certified licensed people. They just came from homes in the neighborhood, but they made it, and they set up a foundation, the 3 doctors. And this is a story that I think could be told anywhere, everywhere to our youth to inspire them to go into medical professions. So those are my 3. I have many more, but I would like just to ask and to share information. Thank you.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Maulana Karenga before, and he said there's 2 main forces in the world at this point. That which is on the way into being and that which is on the way out. Another sister said everybody doesn't know everything. No, I mean, those questions you asked, they're kind of global. They're kind of big. I don't have those kinds of answers. What I shared with you today, I was invited to come on and talk about, and I was asked questions about, the organization, CMOTAP. Those are the things we've done. But my journey is almost finished. So I don't, these things are, I tell you the things that we did, and sometimes I'm not sure the results were good. I mean, the process was good, but the results weren't good. There's more of the things we fought against, they're worse now than when we started.
Well, better to have tried,
The lyrics are worse. The radio and television programs are worse. There's some areas in which there are less people there's more people in the prisons. Just because I'm a psychiatrist doesn't mean that I can tell you the answer to mass incarceration and police terror, police brutality and police terror. I don't have those answers. I work on those issues with people. I've worked on those things with organizations, but I don't have answers I can give you like that. There might be somebody who can do that, but I'm not that person.
Yeah, I'm wondering because just like you, end of the line, and I hope it's not the end of everything, but I'm not seeing the discussions. I'm not hearing of the gatherings that used to be somewhat productive. I agree that things have turned back because even I look at Sanford Williams' program that I'm familiar with. I made an assessment a little while back, and I said, we thought we had taught all the black history and everything, but what happened to those youth who are now grandparents? What are they doing? That our circumstances seem to be a matter of reversing the respect for ourselves and others, reversing the need for cultural and heritage kinds of programs, not having accountability from various ones, including our school boards, because I think we knew what we were aiming for, and I thank everybody for their loyal and participative endeavors, right, and for their sacrifices. But I guess we couldn't see back 25, 30 years ago where we were going, but at least we tried, and I'm hoping that others are taking up. That I just, am limited and I don't know. But I thank you also, Dr. McIntosh, because you continue to have those Zoom meetings. You continue to have minefields on the radio, and you continue to fight the fight, which is right and good. And bless you for your continued activity, because it does make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, sister, for your encouragement.
That was beautiful. Yes.
Yes, this is Dr. James. Can you hear me?
Okay. Go on.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Dr. James, 1 minute, please. Dr. James,
Yeah.
1 minute, please. 1 minute, please. Sister Witcher, I believe, I remembered when you were speaking, someone had mentioned to me that there were universities offering free tuitions to black males who wanted to go to medical school. And I actually just kind of Googled it, and I see here NYU Grossman School of Medicine is one of them. But please Google it. And, I mean, everybody listening, look into that for medical and for anything else that specifically pertains to us. Thank you, Dr. James, for the wait.
Dr. James,
right.
next.
All right. How you doing, sir? Dr. McIntyre, correct? Is it McIntyre or McIntosh?
McIntosh.
Okay.
McIntosh.
Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with your group. Was it Simhotep? It was a Simhotep, correct? Is that it?
Yes, that's one of the groups that I'm a part of. Another group that I'm a part of is called the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. That's the organization formed by Marcus Garvey. Until very recent, I was a Surgeon General of UNIA, and I'm still an active member of UNIA, and I also work with the Board for the Education of People of African Ancestry, and I've been the chair for that for a while. That's the John Henry Clark House. So we just talked. He asked me about CEMOTAP, and I answered him about the work of CEMOTAP.
Yeah, I understand. I don't, okay. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. I don't want to take up too much time. I know your group. I've listened to you on the radio, WBAI. When does your show come on? Your show comes on WBAI. Is that the station?
Yes, WBAI Wednesdays at 2 p.m.
Okay. Yeah, because I'll try to listen to it. I didn't know you came on. It doesn't come on the podcast. You have to listen to the radio show, right?
No, you can also go to WBAI.org, and they have a real-time listener. You can listen to any show that's on, and you can do that from any place where you have internet service. You can go to WBAI.org and get the same show simultaneously as it's being broadcast in New York on FM radio. And, in fact, you can do it after the fact. You can go, like if you wanted to hear Brother Williams' show, you could just go to WBAI.org, look in what they call the archives, and you'll find, Mindfield, not the Mindfield, it's called Mindfield. You just look up Mindfield, go back to 2 p.m. this past Wednesday, and you'll hear the show with Brother Sanford Williams.
Press delete again. All old messages deleted.
All right. So now my question is, I know that your organization, Simhotep, does a lot. Do you have any programs going on that is trying to change some of these problems we have in the urban areas, like the violence and the murder, the black-on-black murder, and the violence against the young people committing violence against each other? Is anything in the works trying to solve anything like that?
Well, historically, we've dealt with the issue. We've dealt with it on a number of different ways. One is through education. We've had many programs on the media that is promoting the violence. We also had some summer programs. One thing, we take no government funds. This is totally volunteer. We're all volunteers, But we had a program called Sons of Semotep, where in the summer we would have youngsters for 6 weeks or so, and we would have people from the community come in every day to teach them different kinds of skills. And some of these were the boys, and sometimes it would be something as basic as changing a car tire. We'd teach them a little martial arts. We would teach them, one brother came in and taught them the Nadu Netra alphabet, things like that. And we've done that. We did that twice. And we also did one where we kind of adopted a school. We went to a school and spoke to them. I went and spoke to them about the history of blacks in medicine and science. And then the principal had me come back. I went and spoke to their a little group they had, a little science club they had. Then the principal had me come back, put me in a room, and then brought different classes in all during the day. And then after that, they asked me to do like a program for the summer. Which I was working, multiple jobs, that sort of thing, but I still we set up a program, and these were the youngsters from Banneker High School. So we set up a program to teach them organizing and debating and organizing, and we included in it a SAT prep course. Now, those you said, what does it have to do with violence? Well, nature abhors a vacuum. When you don't have the kinds of community centers we used to have, where youngsters are going in and doing useful things, or even just entertaining and enjoyable things like sports and games, that sort of thing. When you don't have that, they find that a lot of the violence the kids commit is after they get out of school, in that period between when they have to get in their house and when they are out on the street, just out of like boredom or whatever it is. Youngsters pick at each other and do certain things and have beefs and that sort of thing. It's not the total solution, but it is a partial solution. We need not just things that are against the violence. We need things that replace the violence. And so anything you do in terms, we also had, this is more recently, we had 2 programs in which we had a brother who taught them computer repair. And so we had like a 4-week course in that, and it was free. You just had to come in, and then the perk was at the end of the program, you got to keep the computer that you were repairing. I have pictures of that, and we did that also at BAPA, the Board for the Education of People of African Ancestry, but the computers were purchased by Semotep. And then we also did a STEM course, which we had Dr. Mark Cray, a brother who had an internet presence called RBG, he was called RBG Doctor, RBG Street Doctor, that's what he was called. And he came and he taught medical school level science and concepts to high school students. Again, it was free. People came in. It was for high school students, but there were people who sneaked in who were from college. They would come because we also made it where the parents could come. Really, anybody they wanted to bring could come. So, but they had the class. They had the table. The conference table where the teaching was going on, where the video, the PowerPoints were being shown, but around the edges of the room in John Henry Clark House, their parents came, and some parents came every week, and one of the siblings who was in college came every week to watch it. So we've kind of, on that area, we focused on that, and then we've supported other groups that, there are a bunch of problems, and our problem, I think, as a community is that we have so many needs that, like let's say we were dealing with hungry people, and let's say a person said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get some potatoes and some vegetables, and I'm going to make a stew. I can afford that. I can afford to get some potatoes and some vegetables with some beans and stuff. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Did you hear me other than I heard a voice say muted, and then I didn't hear anything.
No. I'm not sure who's doing that.
I
can hear you. I can hear you.
I'm hearing the words muted and unmuted.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah, I can hear you now, though.
Okay. All right. So what I'll say is our problem is such that if a person decided they were going to make this stew or whatever it is, what we find, and, like sometimes I'm a little abrupt with people on the radio because I've gone through this for 30 or 40 years. This isn't nobody elected me to solve problems for our community. I'm not on a payroll. This is my community work, and everybody has to do the work. You do the work, and we can solve some of these problems. But what happens is that if we take on media, then somebody comes and wants to know, are we doing the prisons? Are we doing this? And the funny thing about it is that we all do work in a whole bunch of areas. But I was saying you can make that stew, and people would come and they start eating the stew, and then we get the person who comes and say, you know what y'all ought to do? Y'all need to have some meat in the stew. Y'all need to have some meat. Another, you need to have fish. And you say, like, what happened to make me responsible to do this work that we as a community have to do? I'm doing what I can do. I've done what I can do. Those are things that we don't do everything. But just when you asked about the violence, yes, we've done things with the violence. I mean, we've done, as I said before, programs to try to teach our youth. And certainly they didn't commit any violence in the time that they were at those things. And then in our outside careers and stuff, Betty, the co-chair, she was the head of a Beacon school that ran a after-school program every day and did a summer camp in the summer. And sometimes I would go there and do things for them. So, we do all kinds of things, but that wasn't the mission of CMOTAP. And the Board for the Education of People of African Ancestry, which strives to impact on statewide educational policy, those are other things that can take people, that can stop the violence. When we do the things about media, we're trying to stop the violence. We're trying to say, stop telling people to kill each other. Stop trying to tell our people to kill each other, and stop disrespecting people, because disrespect is at the heart of most murders. At the heart of most murders, people, if you look and trace it back, those things that occur. I'm not talking about people that are doing crime and and kill somebody in the middle of committing a crime. I'm talking about people that kill each other in these disputes. The basic issue most of the time is just a lack of respect for each other. And this is a program. They're being programmed to disrespect each other. They're being programmed to have, quote, beefs. They're being programmed to insult each other. They're being programmed to have diss records, diss things. And it's very acceptable among people that this is going on. But these things, I'm telling you, lead to the violence that you're talking about. And then again, if you're promoting drugs in the drug trade are responsible for a significant portion of the murders that occur. That's my answer, brother. But the fact of the matter is that, like I said before, I wasn't elected. I'm not an elected official. I'm not a paid employee of anybody. That work I do is my volunteer work, and it's the work that we all have to do.
I understand. I'm not saying you had any responsibility or anything of the sort. I was just wondering, because I know that your organization, CMOTAP, they were in a lot of different. I've listened to them doing various things. I wasn't sure exactly what was the main, goal or function of the group. Don't you meet in Queens or something like that? Wasn't it in Queens?
Yes, we have our own building in Queens that we paid for, burned the mortgage. Again, no government funding whatsoever, no grants. And this is people that put their pennies and dollars together to do these things. So we have a headquarters that has been used for so many things. In fact, the UNIA uses our headquarters to meet. That's the Marcus Garvey's organization uses our headquarters to meet. They're running right now a math academy for youngsters that want to learn math. People are teaching them math there for free, you know, at the academy that they have. And running in female class. So when you've encountered us, you've probably encountered us in our role, the educational role, where we would have forums on various topics that were either that in general are not being covered properly in the media. So you see, we'll have programs about political prisoners. We'll have programs about health. You know, we'll have programs about all kinds of things. That's in that capacity. But with respect to the issue you raised, which was the violence, you know, the main ways we've approached this through education and through positive programs for the youth. But that's not our main work. That's not the work that we do most of the time. We've done that a few summers. We've done that, and we've done that in a few courses.
I understand. You know what? One of the reasons why I asked was because I'm a member of a group over here, and we're trying to get started. And some of those things that you mentioned as far as education and working with the children and so forth is some of the things they're trying to do over here in New Jersey, in the Newark area. So that's why I was wondering what kind of work, because I know you do that type of work. You do a lot. You're very, very, very popular. You do a lot. So I was just asking, you know, various questions about what they were doing. I know the whole system, the whole problem with the violence is systemic. It's not a simple problem. It's very complicated, and it's a systemic problem. It's everything. It's education, it's jobs, housing, it's everything.
Yeah.
But
brother, with the issue of violence, look at this. That these TV programs, I told you, you watch 200,000 murders by the time you're an adult, okay? 40,000 murders, 200,000 acts of violence just on it, okay? Now, people have to feel that. If it's not even in their mind, there's something wrong with that. That TV could be used for all kinds of things to improve the lives of people, but instead, it is used to brainwash them into stereotyping people and titillating them with violence and non-procreative sex. You know, it's strange. It's weird. And, like, I guess what I wonder is why isn't everybody up in arms? How can they turn on the radio, have people pay to advertise on shows that are playing records telling their kids to kill each other, telling their kids to calling the women out of their names, advising using code words to just talk about all types of, as I said before, non-procreative, non-productive sex. And they're doing this, and their kids they buy their kids an iPhone or iPad to listen to it, to put it in they don't even know what the kids are listening to. And then when they turn on the TV, they see this stuff. Why isn't everybody up in arms about that? Because until they are, you can't stop the violence. Bob Moore set the example a long time, and I use it all the time. The reason that people pay millions of dollars for 30 seconds, a 30-second commercial in the Super Bowl is because they know that media can change people's behavior. It's been written about by the American Academy of Pediatrics and all kinds of other people. So if 30 seconds can do that, can cause a person to buy a Mercedes-Benz, then what do you think it is if a child puts earphones on and he's listening to people talking about their beefs with this group and that group, talking about how he shot homie and homie was lopsided, when they give them Grammys for that? They gave a Grammy with that exact line. Well, a line like that I was talking about, like he left homie lopsided, meaning that he shot him in the front seat of his. I mean, that won a Grammy Award year before last. And you know what? we took, along with a group called Clear the Airwaves, we sent a letter, and we sent a letter to every councilman and every assemblyman in the state. We got almost no responses from them. And that's because they said this is just a letter. This is just a letter from one disgruntled Negro, 2 or 3 disgruntled Negroes. It doesn't mean anything. But the question is, why aren't the parents whose kids are getting killed, why aren't they upset about that? Why aren't they expressing their upset to both the sponsors of this stuff, the stations that are broadcasting it, and to the elected officials that these places can't operate without. And these people are operating in violation of FCC regulations and all kinds of things. But our community, I'd like to ask you the question: why isn't everybody up in arms? When you know these things, you know that 30 seconds can make a person buy a $100,000 Mercedes-Benz. Then what do you think it is when your child is 6 years old with earphones on, teaching them the most vile and violent things that could be taught? It's sad.
It's a good question,
Not
brother.
something I can't fix it. I've been spending a long time. We have, not just me, but a bunch of people in CEMOTAP. This is what we've been trying to address. There's a group now getting ready to have a big meeting in D.C. to try to organize nationwide around the murder music. But as I said before, this has been going on for years, and it doesn't seem to even create a blip in the oscilloscope of our people's minds.
Well, you know what? I was trying to answer your question, but they had me on mute. But
I'm sorry, brother.
I'm just I had to call back. But anyway, I can't answer the question why people are not up in arms. That's something that that's another problem, because some of the parents are not doing the right thing either, you know. And so it's a systemic problem. It's a problem that's been going on for many, many years, and it's not easy to solve because it stems from a lot of different areas: education, housing, unemployment, drugs. You can make a long list of problems that we have. And like you said, you don't get paid for solving those problems, and neither do I. And the people that do get paid for solving those problems, they're not doing a very good job at it, you know. And that's all I can say. But I appreciate your information and your knowledge. And how long ago did you work out of Harlem Hospital? Because do you know Dr. Beckles, cardiologist?
Name sounds very familiar. Was he also into like electrical engineering or something? He was a physician, but he was like a biomedical engineering. Was he into that?
Yeah, Dr. Beckles was an engineer before he became a cardiologist. Yeah.
Okay, that's the same one. Yeah,
you know him, right?
I knew him. I knew him, but I don't know him now. You know what I mean? But that was.
Yeah, he was. I met him up in Harlem because I was doing like a residency. I'm a podiatrist, and we went out. We worked out of that CCPL on Amsterdam Avenue. Are you familiar with that place? It was affiliated with Harlem Hospital. It was a mental illness clinic. I think it's called CCPL.
Where was it located? Council Center for Problems of Living?
Amsterdam, I think.
Hold on, brother. Listen. What did you mean? The Council Center for Problems of the Living on 145th?
I think that's it. Yeah. I think that's it. That's it.
I was the executive director there. I was the medical director and executive director there in the late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, I was up there. I was there in the early 90s. Dr. Beckles was a medical doctor there, and there was a doctor named Dr. Clark, Michelle Clark. I don't know if you're familiar with her. Was she a doctor or a PA?
She's not the Michelle Clark. She's not the Michelle Clark that wrote the the book on mass incarceration. She's a physician. She's a public health physician. I know her. She's been to, in fact, her son came to at least one of the programs that we had at Clark House. Yes, I know her.
Listen, is she still working there? And I was trying to contact
I don't know her like that.
Went to
I
school
don't know
with
where
her.
she's working. I don't know her like that, but I know that she also was a part of the community.
Okay, Miss Wiz. Okay, Miss Wiz, I'm sorry. But I was just, I'm sorry. I don't want to get off the subject.
Yeah,
all right,
awesome.
but thank you.
It's awesome. I'd like to say that in the beginning I said that this man was a bright, shining light, even in the twilight. And this proves it.
Well, you far too kind, brother. Thank you for the invitation. And
even in the twilight, because you know, brother, you you seem like a younger brother to me as I meet you. And you know, we don't stay here forever, and we're elders now, and ancestors will come. Ultimately, we'll all become ancestors, but we need to get all the information out of you and enjoy the awesomeness of you for what you have done for our people over time. Oh, well, the truth is right.
Harry Tubman would probably smack me for not doing more. She wouldn't feel sorry for us at all.
Now you're doing
I thank you for your kind words, brother.
You're doing the work of 20 people, and you've done it over time, and I'm honored to have you had come on here, and then I'm honored for you to have me come to your place there on the next Saturday. But I need to first say something about the shows that are coming on tomorrow, and then we need to get your information on how to contact you. So let me do this for a second, brother, doctor. Okay. Tomorrow at 4:00. Well, that's not a show exactly, but it's actually I'll be doing, I think, jazz or some type of music for people from 4:00 until 5:30. And then Forrest will be doing, and there'll be special requests too, if you want to. And then Forrest will be, Dr. McIntosh, I retired in 2006, and I hadn't done no work for nobody since 2006. And because of you and Molestia Sante, I found Forrest Nance. Now I'm working. I'm doing well. But it's really very refreshing. And so it's awesome, it's good. And I wouldn't have met you. So I hope we have a long, long, long relationship, as long as it can be. God is good, Creator is good, but not going to give us so much. People like Forrest. Forrest Nance is the CEO of this company. Forrest is my former student from the class of 1975. And he tells me that the most outstanding thing that happened in my Black Studies class was when they opened the Wiz in January of 1975. We went there immediately, one of the first shows. And I hadn't thought about it then, but it was a pioneering thing. At any event, we saw Mr. Farrakhan there. He was down in the in the seats where the right up near the front. We were way up in the top there, but I remember that. And Forrest, maybe you might want to say a word to the brother, because I'm giving you accolades for being the CEO of this company. And if it don't be for you, Molestia Sante, and this brother here, McIntosh, I wouldn't be here tonight with you. I probably still wouldn't have a job and wouldn't be working either. But I'm coming back to work. I'm back to work now because I see there's a need, and I can't go out that way. So that's why I'm back doing this. Now, as we move forward then, so on every weekday at 7, they have a prayer time here on this station. Other than that, and then there's sister that does a show after for us on Saturdays at 8:30 to 9:30. Nadia, from 8:30 to what?
8:30 to 9:30. Let us heal the world.
Let us heal the world. Yes. And now, in terms of thanking you, if we could pay you, we couldn't pay you. I'm saying, but there should be some kind of a medal or award for the awesomeness of a brother like yourself, what you do for us over time, and keep on doing it. I guess as long as you're going to be able to do it, and I guess time will come when you won't, and then that will be the time you won't be able to do it. But I'm glad. I'm sure everybody gained a lot of information, and they may want to contact you somehow, Dr. McIntosh. And I wondered if you could give them either email or whatever, some number.
Yes, if you're gonna, the best thing would be to text me or I would say to email me. I gave you the one, drcemotap@gmail.com. That's drcemotap@gmail.com. No dots or anything other than the one I said. drcemotap@gmail.com.
Okay. Okay, so that's good.
Okay. I can't promise that I'm going to be able to do or make many of the events or things that people might invite me to, but I enjoyed myself with you here today. I hope that things I've said, some of them have been useful, and I think that Brother Williams is too effusive in his praise because he certainly did more than I did work, because he worked with the young people, and I think that Malefi, because I referred him to Malefi Asante or gave him the contact, he's trying to put me on that level. I definitely ain't on that level. Malefi is one of my heroes. He's who I named he and Professor John Henry Clark is who I named my youngest son after. But I thank you. This has been a rich experience for me. It's been an ego-gratifying experience for me, and it's been encouraging and inspiring to make me do as much as I can with the time that I have left. So I thank you all for having me here. I thank you for the invitation. I thank you for the hospitality.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Peace and blessings. Salam alaikum.
Peace and blessings to you too.
Okay, as we go out, we're going to stop the recording here.